Every great civilization has its origin story, a tale that's been whispered down through the generations. Today, we're going to journey back to the very beginning of one of the world's oldest to see how China was born.
And like any epic, this one starts with a legend. It doesn't begin with dates and facts, but with these incredible tales of mythical emperors, godlike figures who supposedly tamed massive floods and taught people how to survive.
But this is the story of how those legends slowly became history, how all those scattered ancient cultures started to come together, how dynasties were born, and how a massive continent-spanning empire was forged in chaos, philosophy, and fire.
All right, so to really get this, we have to start where it all began. And like so many great stories, this one starts by a river, or in this case, two of them, the mighty Yellow and the Yangtze. These fertile river valleys, this is the cradle where Chinese civilization first took root.
So way back, long before any emperors, you had these Neolithic cultures, like the Longshan. Then comes the legendary Shang dynasty, which is still kind of hazy, more myth than history. But then, right around 1600 BCE, things start to sharpen. We get the Shang dynasty, and after them, the Zhou. And it's really with the Shang that the written story of China truly begins.
So, the Shang dynasty. This is where things get real. This is where legend becomes history. And you might be asking, how do we know? Well, it's because they left stuff behind, real tangible proof. Archaeologists dug up their capital city, and, this is the amazing part, they found thousands of what we call oracle bones. These were actual animal bones and turtle shells that they would write questions on to communicate with their ancestors and gods. It's the first evidence we have of Chinese writing.
Okay, so when the Zhou came along and kicked out the Shang, they had a problem. How do you justify that? Their solution was just brilliant. They called it the mandate of heaven. And look, this wasn't just God chose me to be king. No. It was more like a divine contract. The heavens gave you the right to rule, sure, but only as long as you were a good, just ruler. If you became a tyrant or if disaster struck, it was a sign you'd lost the mandate, and someone else had the right to take over. This one idea would shape Chinese politics for 3,000 years.
So the Zhou dynasty, it had an incredible run, the longest in China's history actually. But nothing lasts forever, right? Its power just disintegrated. The kingdom shattered into all these smaller, warring states. It was an absolutely brutal, chaotic time. But, and this is what's so incredible, out of all that violence and turmoil came one of the most creative and brilliant intellectual periods in all of human history.
And that chaos led to the single most important question of the time. How on earth do you create order when the world is falling apart? With everything collapsing, China's greatest minds stepped forward, and each one of them had a radically different answer. It was an era so full of ideas, it became known as the time of the 100 schools of thought.
And what's so fascinating here is how you get these three totally different answers to the same problem. You've got Confucius, who's all about bringing back order through morality, duty, and respecting your place in society. Then you have the Daoists, basically saying, hey, just chill out. Forget all these man-made rules and just go with the natural flow of the universe. And then you've got the legalists. Their take, people are basically selfish, and the only way to keep them in line is with an iron fist and super strict laws.
And for Confucius, everything, and I mean everything, started with this one idea: filial piety. The whole logic was, if you can get the family right, if everyone respects their parents and their elders, then that same respect will ripple outwards and create a peaceful society. The family was like a miniature kingdom, and if you could bring order to that, you could bring order to the world.
So for centuries, you have these epic philosophical debates happening while states are literally at war with each other. But guess which idea won out in the end? It wasn't the one about being a good person, and it wasn't the one about going with the flow. Nope. It was the one about power, pure, ruthless efficiency.
Yeah, this state called Qin, kind of on the outskirts, they went all in on legalism. They basically turned their entire society into a well-oiled military machine and just, one by one, wiped out all their rivals. It was brutal, it was bloody, but it worked. For the first time ever, all of China was united under one rule. And the guy who did it, the king of Qin, he gives himself this brand new title, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. And his ambition was just on another level. I mean, for his own tomb, he commissions an entire army to protect him in the afterlife. Over 8,000 unique, life-sized terracotta soldiers.
And to protect his new empire from northern tribes, he started this insane construction project, connecting all these existing walls to make one giant barrier. This was the very beginning of what we now know as the Great Wall.
But maybe his biggest legacy, the thing that lasted the longest, the title he invented for himself, Huangdi, or Emperor. Think about that. His dynasty was a flash in the pan, but that title, it stuck around for more than 2,000 years, all the way to 1912.
To keep this massive new empire from falling apart, he made everything the same. One writing system, one type of coin, one set of measurements. He broke the power of the old aristocrats and basically erased the old world. But he did it with such brutality, burning books, executing scholars, that the whole thing came crashing down just a few years after he died.
But you know, from the wreckage of that collapse, something new and much more lasting emerged. It was a dynasty started by a commoner, a rebel named Liu Bang. This was the Han dynasty. And they were smart. They looked at what the Qin did and said, okay, let's not do that again.
And this right here shows you the secret to their success. The Han kept the good parts of the Qin, the unified country, the central government, but they swapped out that harsh legalism for a softer, more practical Confucianism. And look at the difference. 15 years for the Qin versus over 400 for the Han. It's no wonder the main ethnic group in China still calls themselves the Han people today. It's their cultural bedrock.
The Han era was just this explosion of creativity and progress. They came up with the civil service exam, this wild idea that you should get a government job based on how smart you are, not who your dad is. They invented paper, perfected steel making. It was such a peaceful and prosperous time that the population just ballooned to nearly 60 million people.
And then, under this amazing emperor, Emperor Wu, they started pushing westward. And in doing so, they opened up what would become the most famous trade route in history, the Silk Road. For the first time, Chinese silk was making its way all the way to the Roman Empire, and new goods, new ideas were flowing back into China.
So, let's just take a breath here. We've gone from ancient myths to the first writings, through centuries of chaos, to the forging of an empire and into a golden age. This incredible journey laid down the blueprint for Chinese civilization. But the real question is, what's left of it today?
And when you really look at it, what's just staggering is how much has survived. This idea that the family is the absolute center of society, the incredible power of a single written language to unite a massive, diverse country, this deep-seated belief in a strong, unified state, even the historical cycle of dynasties rising and falling. These aren't just dusty old ideas, they are the living, breathing foundations of China.
And that really brings us to our final thought. The concepts born in this ancient era, they didn't just stay in the past. They're still shaping conversations and decisions today. So, I'll leave you with this. How do the echoes of this ancient world, its epic stories, its brilliant philosophies, its world-changing inventions, how do they still shape our world?